completely done with whatever you need to do. We humbly request to get closer, inshallah. We're not going to last, this for a very long time. We're just going to go through the questions that you have asked, inshallah, and try to answer them briefly. If you still need further elaboration, inshallah, then we can take it further and you can text us back, inshallah.
And they can come personally later on.
Yeah.
Okay, first question.
So the first question that we are taking, was Muawiyah a Sahabi? That's the first question from the first number of the answer is yes. He was the son of Abu Sufyan radiallahu anhu, who was also a companion. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu himself was also a companion. He was the companion of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who of course had Iman and Islam in his heart, but he never disclosed this before the victory of Makkah. So after the victory of Makkah, he proclaimed his Islam, and of course he is considered to be a companion of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Given the hadith which relates to the Khilafah lasting 30 years and kinship after, should Muslim not consider those coming after 30 years as true Khalifas? So Khulafa al-Rashidin, the aspect which was being mentioned from that hadith that I mentioned to you, which is mentioned by Imam at-Tirmidhi rahmatullah alayhi and authenticated by many of the books of hadith, is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that indeed the Khulafa al-Rashidin, the Khilafah which is guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and preserved and protected, will remain for 30 years. And that's an authentic narration of At-Tirmidhi. And that what defines the 30 years of Khilafah. The time which comes after, such as the time of Amir Muawiyah radiallahu an, or the portions of Hassan radiallahu an, or even after that the times of the Umayyads and many of the individuals afterwards, you cannot consider them as Khulafa al-Rashidin. They are not considered to be those individuals that Rasulullah ﷺ had defined as the Khulafa, meaning the successors who are al-Rashidin, and we already spoke about the details of it, the truthful, those who have been protected in all aspects of life. So if you talk about the lives of individuals after this 30 years, no, we would not refer to them as the Khulafa. We will not refer to them as Khulafa. The aspect of the terminology of the word Khulafa remains with these four Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een. And then yes, after that, Amarats or Mulukats or the aspect of running kingdoms or dynasties, that continues, because Khilafat is something which doesn't transfer in your lineage, in your blood. It transfers to those which are the most capable of taking that position. So making it not too detailed, the aspect of the Khulafa al-Rashidin remains until Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu and his demise. Some have added the 6 years of Hassan radiallahu anhu, which makes it 30 years complete, but some have not also regarded that as Khulafa al-Rashidin. But the aspect of Khulafa al-Rashidin remains there, and then afterwards you can consider them as Amir, as a person who was a leader, or a person of other status which were given to them at that time.
Insurance company, is it halal or not?
So the question is, Assalamu alaikum brother, I'm working for an insurance company. Is it halal to work with an insurance company or not? Please provide more details of what you do in an insurance company. We would need to know more details. What's your responsibility? What's your job description? What you need to do in that company will define the answer of this question.
Without wudu, can someone stay in the masjid?
So now the question is, without wudu, can a person stay in the masjid? There are two types of impurities for both the brothers and the sisters. One type of impurity is called najasat khalida, and one is known as najasat khafifa. The smaller impurity and the larger impurity. These two types of impurities are both dealt with men and women, both of them. In the case of najasatul khafifa, which is the lighter najasat or impurity, that's those impurities in which you would only need wudu to become pure, such as passing of gas, stool number 1, number 2s. These are those things which will only require you to go make wudu, and you can come back to the masjid, or you can make your salawat and your prayers and all the ibadat and stuff that you need to do. In the case that you are only in the need of the lighter aspect, or you only need wudu to become pure, in that case you can sit in the masjid without even having wudu. But yes, of course, being in wudu is definitely rewarding. Virtues that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ mentioned, for those who make salah and in the state of wudu remain in the masjid, they are counted as though that they are making salah itself. So if you are in minor impurity, meaning you only need wudu to become pure to make salah, you only need wudu to read the Quran openly as mushaf, you can remain in the masjid in that impurity. Second type of impurity is called najasatul ghalidha, which means those impurities which requires either the brother, the man, or the woman to take a shower and a bath in order to become pure. This is known as najasatul ghalidha, which details are known to the elders themselves, such as the specific moments and periods and days of the woman, and of course for the men, specific moments and times during the relationship with their families, and of course during the sleep itself. These aspects are known as najasat ghalidha. If a person is in that impurity, of course you don't have wudu, but you can also not be in the masjid at that moment. And that's why when the sisters do go for Hajj and Umrah, it is required from them to be in the state of pure purity. Meaning they cannot be in the state of major impurity in order to go and perform tawaf and do the tawaf of the Kaaba, because that's the house of Allah. So minor impurity, when you only need wudu, yes, you can be in the masjid without wudu, but of course not recommended. Major impurity, when you need wudu, a shower to become pure, then you cannot come inside the masjid itself.
What qualities do you need to be a hero in Islam?
On that to extent, if an area in the masjid, like our sister's area, is not intentionally a masjid, can then a sister in the hard period...
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Very good point that you mentioned to us is that, for example, there are certain masjids, masalla, in areas where the brothers who are responsible of the masjid have designated a certain portion to be a masjid and certain portion to not be a masjid. Meaning the niyyah of masjid is not there. Even though there is a red carpet there, you pray there, mashallah, it feels like a masjid, you can hear the imam, the speakers are there, but the intention of masjid is not there. In that specific case, the sisters can come to that location in that area in this masjid. Okay, so just to clarify, in this specific place in Baitul Mukarram, the masjid itself, the sisters area in the back is not considered to be a complete masjid area as well. So of course, if someone is in the state of impurity and they would just want to come for the discourses and programs and stuff like that, then inshallah that's perfectly fine, because it's not a masjid itself. Even the masjid that I attend, they have two halls for the sisters. One is a masjid and the side hall is not a masjid, even though both are almost connected with only one door between them. So the sisters who do need to come into the masjid for some programs, they can come with comfort and with relaxation and knowing that, you know what, we can come into the masjid even though it's the time of impurities as well. The next question which was asked was, but in that case, when you are doing i'tikaf for the brothers in the masjid, you won't be allowed to go to those places. That's also a detailed issue. So if anything is not made in niyat of a masjid, so for example, this area, if someone does i'tikaf here, you will not be allowed to go to the sister's side and sleep there, rest there, take some comfort, because the niyat is not of the i'tikaf there. That's more detailed and complex things which can be discussed later. The other question, which was also my topic, and I'm answering these questions, what are the qualities do we need to be a hero in Islam? Meaning, what qualities do we need itself? We have spoken about this, something which was very brief and precise, and that is, as much as we can, to do the ittiba and the following of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And wallahi, that will take you to the climax of this world that you cannot even imagine. So the following of the footsteps of the life of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will let you reach such levels of greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, closeness of Allah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, that whoever proclaims that they love Allah must do the ittiba of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the ittiba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will lead a person to become muqarrab in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accepted in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the greatest characteristics of becoming a hero is to follow as closely as possible. Bilal al-Habshi radiallahu anhu was amongst the servants, a slave which was bought by the wealth of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. In Arabic, in the Arabs, knowing your lineage was something beautiful. Meaning anyone whose lineage was known, you were a man of importance, right? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was known for this. He would tell the lineages of people left and right. He was known for the man of lineage. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in lineage himself, Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib bin Hisham bin Qusay bin Qilab bin Marra bin Ka'ab bin Lu'ay bin Fahd bin Mudraka bin, all the way towards Adnan and towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with 80 chains. That's known. So people with dignity were known. Bilal radiallahu anhu's chain of narration was only known for him and his father. No one knew his grandfather's name, Bilal bin Rabah. Meaning that was the extent of his lineage. But Umar radiallahu anhu would rise when Bilal radiallahu anhu would come. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Oh Bilal, I heard your footsteps in Jannah when I went there." Meaning it's a man whose lineage is not known to people. Only the name of the father is known and grandfather is not known. What made him become that hero was the ittiba of the Prophet of Allah. So the greatest means of becoming those heroes is to bring your life as close as you can to the life of the Prophet of Allah.
It's a big one. وأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب السابقون السابقون. So he wants to ask.
An answer.
The ayat is وأصحاب الميمنة ما
People
أصحاب.
of the left, people of the right, the foremost apostles of the people that walked in there. The foremost that had the question. So, good question. A question from the question that is that in chapter number 56, Surah 56, in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the beginning stages of this surah mentions وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala categorizes the humanity into three levels. Individuals on the right, these are the people who are the successful ones. The individuals towards the left, individuals who are the people of hellfire, and those who are muqarrabun, those who are the VIP of the time, meaning those who are the foremost individuals. And subhanAllah, subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions they are the most in the early stages and the least in the last stages. So also defines that most of them will be the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the question is that for those who are sinful Muslims, for those Muslims who have lived their life on Iman, which way they will be in? Meaning, will they be towards the right? Which way towards the left on that Qiyamah, on the day of Qiyamah? Of course, no one exactly knows the Hisab and Qitab, and particularly for myself, I wouldn't know. But there's one thing that we hear from the authentic ahadith of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, that from amongst the places of Jahannam, there are levels of fire. So amongst the levels of the fire of Jahannam, as Rasulullah ﷺ defined to Sahaba, that there are 7 levels of Jahannam itself. The first and the foremost level, which is the topmost, which is the least of its heat and torture, that level itself is known as Jahannam. That level is known as Jahannam. And the least and the harshest of what Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned in the hadith is, one mentions Hawiyah, one mentions Jahim, right? Both have been mentioned. And Rasulullah ﷺ defined that the deepest portion of Jahannam will be for those who are munafiqeen. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the ayat of the Quran, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ, meaning the worst of the stages. The topmost, which is the least of the places of Jahannam, is, according to the hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ, for those sinful believers who died while in the state of committing major sins and minor sins and without asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. So there is a hadith of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, which defines that there is a place in Jahannam for the believers who had believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul, but they left their lives in a way that they never asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness and tawbah. In that specific ayat of the Quran in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, is it that the believers will be separated even though they will be sent to fire? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Maybe it is just the initial separation of individuals, and when they have gone through the tests and trials which are supposed to be put upon them, then they will be taken out. As there is a hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ, which defines that when the believers who are believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul, when they will be tortured in the fire of Jahannam and hell, and the people of Jahannam will begin to accuse them and say, what did your faith do for you? You used to say, believe in Allah, believe in your Rasul and all that. What has your faith helped you? You're burning in fire just like us. So at this moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ordain upon Malik, the guardian of the fire of Jahannam, to take away from fire of Jahannam anyone who has even a mustard seed of iman and faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and proclaim the prophecy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and at that time they will be taken out. And this is the time that hasrat, the desire, the remorse and the guilt will be to the disbelievers, and they will wish that they would have believed in Allah once in their life, so they would have also been taken out. So yes, there are authentic ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ which relate to us, which mention us in detail, that those believers who die in the state of committing major sins and major crimes without asking for forgiveness and repentance, they will be going towards hellfire. And then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destines and wants from them, they will be taken out and they will be sent towards Jannah. Again, referring to this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, maybe it's just the initial separation only on that day of Qiyamah, because it's speaking on that day of judgment. That initially they will be put towards the wrong sided, and then of course after going through the tests and trials, they will be taken out.
Brothers, another thing comes to mind which I should mention, that once suppose we are seeing a Muslim committing a sin, so the first thing that should cross our mind is not, oh, this man is a sinner and I am better than him. If this thought comes to my mind that he's a sinner and I am better than him, then I have committed a sin much worse than the person has committed, and I have gone much more below. So we do not know what will be the end condition of each person. I do not know whether or not I will die with Iman, and no one can tell you, no matter how big pious person he is, whether or not he will die with Iman. So first of all, if we see a Muslim in sinning or something, then we should try the three ways as Rasulullah mentioned in the hadith. The first, if we can stop him with our hand, we stop him with our hand. If we cannot, then we stop him with our mouth. The least we can do is think in our heart that, oh Allah, please give this person hidayah so he does not do this kind of sin. And never to judge someone that he is committing sin, so I'm better than him. Wallahi, we do not know if Allah will make him in my position and make me in his position. So I just wanted to add that.
Next one is general question pertaining to parents' treatment with kids and children rights over parents.
Again, general question pertaining to
The question is making parents an example for the kids to follow. Basically. Rewinding ko ba yung usapan naman ito ko medyo.
So a very good question, and of course it's a very detailed topic itself. The question is pertaining to the parents' treatment, the kids, and of course the children's rights over the parents. Whenever I get an opportunity to lead a nikah, I usually say the statement, I say that any individual's rights is definitely someone else's responsibility. If someone says my rights, that means there must be someone responsible over those rights. And anyone's responsibility has to be someone's rights as well. So the question itself is pertaining towards the treatment of the kids, and of course the responsibility of the parents in raising children, and also how parents should get involved in masajid before expecting kids. Meaning it's the responsibility of the parents to be more involved in the masjid, the workshops, and places to actually know the reasons of doing tarbiyah, as children are a huge amanat and trust. It is mentioned that a man brought his son to Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anh, and he says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, speak to my son and give him some nasiyat of how to respect and honor me. Umar radiyallahu anhu, with the advice, spoke to this child. After speaking to this child for a little bit, the child says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, jazakallah for all that good that you have told me. But can I ask you a question? He says, sure. He said, may I ask you a question? He says, sure. He says, you have told me all of my responsibilities, but can you please mention my rights as well? Can you also please mention the responsibility that my father has for me? So at this moment, Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu mentioned that I've heard Rasulullah saying that there are three responsibilities of every father or a mother, meaning of a parent, for their child. The first thing is to find a good mother for the child. Meaning that's the first haqq. Prior to the birth of a child, it's a haqq of a child that a man finds a suitable mother for that child. Meaning that's even prior to making a decision of marriage. That is that person suitable to raise my own children? Right? This is for our youth. Many a times we fall in crushes and loves and things like that. Think twice. Is it even, possible that this individual will raise my children? So it says the first responsibility of a father upon his own child, the right is that to find a good mother for this child. Second, the hadith itself mentions to give the child a good name. Meaning this is amongst the haqq, amongst the rights and responsibilities of a father, to give your child a good name. And third, to give your children the ta'aleem and the etiquettes from the Quran itself. To teach them the foundations of Islam. So Umar radiyallahu anhu says these are the three rights. The young man says, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar, I would like to say something. My father never found a good mother for me. He never gave me a good name, and he never taught me etiquettes." At this moment, Umar radiallahu anhu said to the father that you have no one to blame except for yourself. You have no one to blame except for yourself. Faqih Abu Lays al-Thamarqandi rahmatullah alayhi in his kitab Tanbihul Ghafilin mentions that a man came to him and says, "My son beat me." So the person says, "How is that possible? That a son lifts his hand on his own father?" He goes, "Yes, my son beat me." So he says, "Have you taught your son Quran?" He says, "No." He says, "Have you taught your son etiquettes, morals and ethics?" He says, "No." Faqih Abu Lays Samarqandi mentions, "You are lucky that your son only beats you. A day will come that he will cut your throat off as well. That if you are not doing that, it's your own responsibility." So many a times, brothers and sisters, in our own communities, we definitely have a huge talks on how to be respectful to your parents, and I would love for our children to learn even more on the respects and the rights and responsibilities. And wallahi, you can never achieve the goodness of this world and akhirah without the mutual respect and consent of your parents. That's truly there. But many a times we miss out on the point on teaching the parents the responsibility of raising our children. They said there are 6 points, not the Tablighi 6 points, they're also very, very important. There are 6 points that Allah mentions in Surah Luqman, chapter number 31, on how to raise your children. I would recommend every mother and father who have children to learn these 6 points that Allah teaches in the surah of how to raise your children properly. Allah is teaching you how to raise children properly from the hikmah of Luqman al-Hakim. That's 6 aspects that Hakim al-Luqman himself used in raising and nourishing his children. So I'll keep that for them to have talab to come back. So if you give them everything today, they'll never come back. No, I'm not that I want them, but to keep a little bit of desire so at least they have that zawq, inshallah. So that one thing. And I would humbly request the brothers of this masjid itself to please arrange seminars and workshops in such ways that the brothers and the sisters who are planning to get married are counseled before. I started a program in Long Island myself. It's called the premarital counseling, in which the brothers and the sisters who are planning to get married, we call them beforehand, and of course parda, hijab and all that, we tell them all the responsibilities. Then at that moment I have a good joke to tell them. So whenever I do the pre-counseling, premarital workshop, I say a joke in their marriage. I tell the guy, "Did you take a workshop of marriage?" He says, "Yes, I did." I said, "Always remember, you will work and she will shop. So you will work and she will shop." Forgive me, sisters. I hope my wife is not listening. Is it live streaming? Oh man, I'm sorry. So now I can get home tomorrow. So make sure please you cook food tomorrow. So now the issue is that we must provide outlets. We must provide bases and foundations for our families, in which inshallah that they can be strong enough as becoming couples. Unfortunately, according to the Gallup research, 70% of every couple who will be married, being it a Muslim or a non-Muslim, within 2 years they will be divorced. 70% of couples will be divorced within the next 2 years, and that's something which is recorded on. And many a time it's not even recorded. So please provide these outlets, inshallah.
Also another point which comes in another hadith regarding the rights the children have over the parents. That is that when they come to the age of marriage, it is also the duty of the parent to help the child find someone who is good in deen, and to get them married as early as possible, as soon as they start getting ready. Because Rasulullah said that if we do not do this, then we'll open the door to zina. And as we know, the country we live in, the zina has become so common, Allah forbid, that this sin's impact has lifelong effect. So may Allah also give us tawfiq that as soon as they reach the age of marriage, we should find a deendar, someone who has deen in their life, such a girl or such a boy, and get them married, inshallah.
Okay, this one here.
Okay, so for what I understand, the question is that I'm praying my sunnah in a masjid and someone does iqtida next to me. Yeah. Someone does iqtida next to me, what should I do if Jamaat gets bigger behind me? So there's a differences of opinion amongst the scholars, and I'll present both of the differences. And of course, this is not the time to discuss the more detailed aspect of the differences of opinion and the schools of thought. We respect and honor all of them as they were those which were accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course their ijtihad. May Allah accept all that and provide us to stay on the path of goodness. There's a difference between Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, which takes of one opinion, and the majority of the scholars such as Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi. They are of the opinion, as I'm a thalasa of the opinion, that if you are making a certain salah and a person was to join behind you, and if they were to make their niyat of their own salah, for example, you are making sunnah of dhuhr, which is 4 rakats, a person comes in and joins behind you for the 2 rakats or 4 rakats or whatever rakats for their own salat, as long as they have their own intention for whatever salah, that will be valid for them. Because it's individual niyyah and intention which will be sufficient for their salah to be complete. According to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala anhu, the intention of the imam and the muqtadi must be the same. And of course there is no following of sunnah and nawafil. So in specific case, an incident which has been mentioned, according to the rulings of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala anhu, if a brother was making their salah, and if a person was to come from the back and they would join them, and the person who is making the salah in the front knows that they are making sunnah, and the person who joins them does not know what the intention is, they just join this individual. So in this specific case, your responsibility is to continue your salah in the manner that you are doing. You don't have to change your intention to a fard. You don't have to break your salah. You don't have to break your salah and punch the guy. Please don't do that. Sometimes people get violent. Sometimes people get very aggressive. Please don't do so, inshallah. So make sure that you don't become violent in that case. Just continue your prayer. If you begin to feel that there are more people adding on in the case that you mentioned, in that specific case, just increase your takbirat in a way that it's a little louder so your own ears can hear. That if someone is doing iqtada, their salat is perfectly for themselves, and your salah is complete for yourself. And of course, if the person who's making the salah in the case is following the rulings of Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi, then you can loudly say takbirat, because at this moment now you have become an imam. Your salah will be valid yourself, and the person making behind you will also be valid itself completely. But a person who is doing the iqtida or following the teachings of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, and of course all of these are righteous scholars and ulama and the fuqaha, and of course we're not here to debate anyone is wrong and right, but in that specific case, you continue your prayer in that manner that you are doing so. You don't change your intentions, you don't move, you don't have to do anything, just continuously do so, and whoever has joined you, it's according to their own intentions.
What's related to this, when somebody joins a Farad Jamaat and he has already prayed the Farad with the intention of Nawafil, is that okay?
So in the case that the brother added on, is that if a person has already made Fard Salah, and they come to a masjid and they find that the congregation Jama'ah is going on, are they allowed to join the Jamaat or not? There is a differences of opinion amongst the ulama, and this is for more people who study traditional knowledge, sit down and study the books, proofs, dalails and stuff like that. So it feels awkward to just say, but because it takes a lot of references and proofs to prove this, and we're not here to refute and prove anyone right and wrong, but according to Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah ta'ala anhu, they are allowed to join this in any case in open circumstances. You are allowed to join without any hesitation. According to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, if you have made your fara'is, if you have already made your obligations, and now you come to a masjid and you see a bigger congregation going on, only in Dhuhr and Isha Salat you can join. If it's Fajr, you cannot join. If it's Maghrib, you cannot join. If it's Asr, you cannot join. Reason being, according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, there is no nafal after Fajr. So you cannot join. You cannot join Maghrib because there is no 3 rakats nafal. After Asr, there is also no nafal. There are nawafil after Zuhr, there are nawafil after Isha. So if a person is following the teachings of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, then you may join a congregation which is going on if you have already prayed, which is Dhuhr and Isha. If you're following the teachings of Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi, then you may join anyone openly.
Let me just mention to the point where if someone is praying sunnah or nafal and someone joins them, then in such a circumstances, after we finish our nafal salah, we should say loudly, the brother, I was praying nafal salah, or I was praying sunnah. If we say it loudly, then those who are following the method of Abu Hanifa. Another thing before I say that when we say the method of Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, we mean that the method of Quran and Sunnah. Please do not get this wrong. When we say the method of Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, we mean the method of Quran and Sunnah. Some people might misguide and say, brother, Quran and Sunnah is something else, and these Imams, they say something else. No, it's completely wrong. In the Quran and Sunnah, they say many things. And these ulama, they have done intense research on Quran and Sunnah, and they were of the caliber of ijtihad. They could, take out the rulings from the Quran and Sunnah. So based on their entire, looking at all the ahadith in the Quran, based on their knowledge and those surrounding them, they came to these conclusions. So all of them are correct. But those who are following their madhab should stick to their madhab, as their imam is also correct. So after we finish salah, we just say loudly, brother, I was praying nafal. So whoever was of that methodology, their namaz will be done. And whoever was of probably Hanafi, then he can repeat his salah again. Jazakumullah.
3 tough questions. What can we use for birth control? How can we tell our kids what ISS is? What should I look for a girl to get married to? 3 questions. Please say something.
Inshallah, we'll answer this question privately. We'll text you back. There's a question we'll ask you.
Let's get the sifats of a girl in Qaid Malali Arba'in.
Okay, so why don't you say this? Why don't you say the last question?
Acha. One of the brothers, they gave 3 questions. I'm just going to say the last questions, and I'm going to request the brother to maybe come in private and get the answer for the next 2. What should I look for in a girl to get married to? So we know the famous hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that inkahil mar'ah li arba'in, that if you want to marry a girl, you should marry looking at 4 qualities. فَلِمَالِهَا وَلِجَمَالِهَا وَلِحَسَبِهَا وَلِدِينِهَا. Number 1 is if you're from a rich family, you can look for a rich girl, no problem. وَلِجَمَالِهَا, if you're handsome, even if you're not handsome. But we can look for a beautiful girl, or we can look for a handsome boy, no problem. فَلِمَالِهَا وَلِحَسَبِهَا, whether we are from a very high family or not from a high family, doesn't matter. If we have deen, then we are from a high family. Like Brother Mufti Sahib gave the example of Bilal ibn Rabah. We don't know his lineage, but he was so honorable. So, if we want to look for a good family, no problem, we can look for a good family. Rasulullah ﷺ said also, وَلِدِينِهَا, look at her deen. And then he mentioned on to say, and he put great emphasis on it, فَظْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ, the greatest and the most important factor is her deen. Ensure that whether she has these 3 or not, that means whether she has wealth, whether she has family, whether she has beauty, both in male and female, make sure there is deen. Make sure there is deen. If there is deen, then that marriage will go towards good. If there is no deen, then that marriage will not bring good in the future. So inshallah, we can look for all these 4 qualities, but we ensure deen is there. With deen, if there is 1 quality, it's still good. If there is 2 quality, it's better. If there is 3 quality, even better. But we make sure deen is there. Jazakumullah.
So the question is, our Prophet sallallahu Mufti Samuel, where are you? That's your question, man. Our Prophet was 25 and Khadija radiallahu anha was 40. In today's Islamic society, younger men marrying older women is seen as almost a sin. Why is this the case, and should this attitude change? So I don't know if I'm supposed to say. That was the one, because he brought up the topic of female and marriage. So I would, I don't know how to answer this in the beginning, but I would say that I might be stepping a lot of issues and opening up a can of worm though. But if, alhamdulillah, from the past bit, I've been covering the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and had a chance to look into a lot more books. If you look at the majority opinion of many of the seerah scholars, such as Ibn Kathir, Ibn Hisham, Ibn Ishaq, they were of the opinion that Khadija radiallahu anha was not 40. That was one thing. She was only a couple of years older than the Prophet of Allah ﷺ. That might be a completely, totally topic to itself of even me saying it. There's only one opinion, I think Ibn Daqiq or someone who mentioned that she was 40. The reason was that Ibn Abbas in one of his narrations radiallahu anhu mentioned the age to be very, very close. If you look at as an intellectual proof, and I'm not here to prove just to decrease the age or somehow, I'm talking about intellectual or traditional Islamic knowledge discussion itself, which is not the ground here. But if you see Khadija radiallahu anha, she gave birth to 6 children. If you take her to be 40 years of age, that means she passed away at the age of approximately 65. If you take 25 years with the marriage of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's what is mentioned, approximately more or less, and even more than that. So it seems far-fetched and very difficult for a lady to give birth to 6 children at a very later portion of her age. If you take her to be in her late 20s, and then you were to add the 25 years, she would be maybe 53 when she passed away. And that's more likely a chance. And that's what Ibn Kathir mentioned. These are not my words. This is Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham discussing this. And I know in our traditions we have been saying 25 and 40 like this is an ayat of the Quran. So it's very hard for many to absorb this at the moment. I know I'm going to get it from many of you afterwards. And you're going to ask me for proofs and daleels and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at it, and I would want you to study traditional knowledge in its depth. Because many a times we hear things and we let go. I would, if you look at things which kind of make sense and more detail to it, and there's so much into it. So if you study the life of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, you would find that she was approximately 28 years of age. She was previously married twice. And if you say that she had 2 children from that age, she also had a son, which his name was Hala. If you take his age, it doesn't fit in to be 40 years of age as well. So there's a lot of complication in this issue to discuss 25 and 40. That's one thing that I wanted to just bring it closer to you. It was only a few years difference. Forget about the opinion that I mentioned, which is actually a majority opinion from many of the scholars of Sirah. If you were to take 40 and 25, norms have changed so much in our society. And there are so many things which have changed in society that needs a lot of changes. And one of the things that hurts me the most is the cases of women which are widowed. Meaning, if unfortunately, may Allah forgive, if certain circumstances come upon a girl, that maybe she gets divorced or husband passes away, and she's of a young age, a single mother, or even sometimes not even having children. In our society, this is an aib, this is a huge fault. This is something which is considered to be the most shunned thing, that you would go and approach a woman like that and marry her and take her into your marriage itself. And it's considered to be the worst of the things, which was considered an honor at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The society and the aspect of how we look at things have completely changed, because the vision and the focus needs to also be brought up. So a topic itself is very, very important, and there needs to be a lot more foundation which needs to be laid. Yes, we're not saying that you should always look for a woman who's older in age and stuff like that. I know, just as a joke, they said behind every successful man there's a hand of a woman. They said every woman puts their hand on a successful man. So, usually it's the case if you're looking for a successful woman who's already established like Khadija radiallahu anha, then yes, you may be looking for someone. But the aspect again comes to it, as Mufti Ubaidullah Sahib just mentioned, is that there are 4 things that you look in a woman which she is greater in. And then there's another narration which mentions that there are some aspect that a man should be greater in. And amongst that, the Prophet ﷺ recommended age. So yes, in most of the cases, the Prophet ﷺ, yes, was older than the other wives. But these were certain conditions which cannot become a hard and a fast rule that, hey, you know what, I gotta do it. I have to follow it. Our teacher, Ma Ihsanul Haq Sahib, Damat Barakatuhum, he said the Prophet ﷺ stayed awake more than he slept in his life. Right? He stayed awake more than he slept in his life. He stayed hungry more than what he ate in his life. But what happens? People say, brother, what is the sunnah of eating? What is the sunnah of sleeping? No one says, brother, what is the sunnah of staying awake? Brother, what is the sunnah of staying hungry? Even though that was the majority portion of the life of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ. So yes, there are certain cases like these which cannot become an extreme rule. And that's why one of the conditions in marriage is something known as kufu. One is the condition, Mufti Sahib is present, a condition is known as kufu. What does kufu mean? It means a match of a standard between the two individuals. Like for example, it can be many things. A girl comes from a very elite family and she grew up in a thing that she would only get married to a Prince Charming or something like that. And she gets married to a guy who is of a very, forgive me for saying an example, of a person who is not of her caliber. So now in Sharia it says look for kufu, look for that equilibrium. Yes, it's not always possible, but the match and the suitability of an individual is also an important point of marriage in Islam. It's something which is a complete package. It's the completion of your faith. It's just not getting two people. It's something which will even stay all the way towards Jannah. So the question is much more detailed. First thing is that there's a difference of opinion if she was even 40 or not. Even if you make it 40 indeed, it's not a hard and fast rule that all of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ was older. Yes, they were younger as well. But yes, if a person does make a decision with istikhara, with mashwara, with looking at all the pros and the cons and making sure that they're making the right decision, then it should become acceptable. But yes, over time, so many things which were acceptable at that time is not acceptable, and that we slowly need to bring forth as acceptable, because whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given His Rasul is the best of the ways. But of course, again, this is not a hard and fast rule that we must follow at all times.
Okay. Regarding Muhammad between wives, be careful, it is sensitive. Woman will pick you up.
Can you close the mic? Live stream, no, I'm just kidding. So in Islam it says you can marry more than one wife. So if you can be fair to all of them. But was it unfair to the other wives that the Prophet of Allah, that our Prophet Jazakallah for writing that our Prophet ﷺ loved Khadija radiallahu anha and Aisha radiallahu anha more? So the Quran itself is not giving you targheeb, it's not giving you advice, it's not promoting you to get married. The Quran itself is given an aspect of permissibility in the aspects that a person can. Again, another aspect which is arise at that moment is what happens to the law of the land. Many a times the Sharia and the concept of it will allow you, but the law of the land itself will not allow you. So that's also something very important which also needs to be considered before making any decisions. I don't want to further elaborate upon that. The aspect of this question that someone asked is that you must have equilibrium, quality of love. The Prophet of Allah's inclination towards Khadija radiallahu anha and Aisha radiallahu anha. The Prophet of Allah himself answered this question. The Prophet of Allah gathered his azwaj and he says, I'm a human being, more or less to an effect. I do my utmost to treat you equally. But that natural instant of that love that Allah has given me for Aisha is more than anyone else. Meaning Rasulullah said this to all of his azwaj. The time he gave all of them, the time that he spent along with all of them, and everything was just equal. To an extent that even the journeys that he took them one after the other. And it was not only her at all times, but Rasulullah himself answered this question to his own azwaj. And who could have asked more openly than the azwaj themselves? And we know many incidents in which they would plan things, not only that they would, I mentioned last year, this, not that they just wanted to put someone else down, but it was that the love of Rasulullah ﷺ. So they would make a plan with Safiya radiallahu anha and a few others and say, you know what, when he comes out of the house of a certain sahabiya, you're going to tell him that his breath stinks. So what have you been drinking? So she was giving Rasulullah ﷺ some honey with water that he truly loved. So he would spend a little bit more time there. So now they wanted to take those extra moments for themselves. They made a plan. Not only that they wanted, it was only pure love for Rasulullah ﷺ. So who could have been more open than the azwaj themselves? Because Sahaba were pure-hearted people. They were not two-faced individuals. They were very pure. Whatever was inside was out of Sahaba. That was the life of Sahaba. So Rasulullah ﷺ himself clarified to his wife. He says, my love for all of you and my treatment for all of you is equal. But that natural inclination towards Aisha is just more by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning it's just there by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm just naturally more inclined towards Aisha radiallahu anha. That was the saying of the Prophet ﷺ himself towards his own azwaj.
This is a very hard question, and regarding the love, the story comes to mind that one of the great scholars and elders of this of century, most probably Junaid Baghdadi, I don't remember, or Abdul Qadir Jilani, one of these two, I don't remember the exact, that one woman came to him and said something and he fainted. So later on, when they woke up that sheikh, so they said that, what did the woman come and tell you that you became unconscious? So he said that lady came to me and she was wearing the hijab, her face was completely covered as according to Sharia. So she told me that, oh Shaykh, if Allah had permitted me, I would have opened my veil and show you how beautiful I am, and yet my husband wants to marry again. If Allah had permitted me, I would have opened my veil and showed you how beautiful I am, and yet my husband wants to marry again. He said, hearing this, I became unconscious that a woman being a makhluk, a creation, she is so possessive regarding the love of her husband. Then imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the creator, how possessive He will be regarding His wahdaniyat, that no one should commit any shirk with me, no one should ascribe anything equals to me. Anything, it could be the idol, or it could be the money, position, and anything else. So regarding the love of Rasulullah, this is a matter of the heart. Wallahi, we do not have control over the heart. Reality is we don't have control over the heart. So if someone, as long as the person is physically being completely equal, that means the nights he has to spend equally, the amount of wealth he gives each wife has to be exact to the cent. I'm not talking about dollar, I'm talking about the cent. But still after that, if he has more love for someone that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is nothing we can do about it. So inshallah, we're not encouraging anyone to marry again. Please understand that, sisters also. We're not encouraging anyone, but anyone who has already done so, they should be careful, they do not break the rules and cross the limits that Allah has been ordained upon the ummah. Another question was regarding the dream, that can anyone explain to me what is the status, what Islam says about dream? To make the answer short, number one, a dream is not a dalil. Dalil means the Quran Hadith is dalil. It's a guide, it's a line that we follow according to the Quran Hadith. Now suppose if in a dream I see something that is not contradictory to my deen, then alhamdulillah we will take it as a glad tiding. If it is not contradictory to my deen and my shari'at and the deen that Allah has prescribed upon me, then we will take it as a glad tiding, no problem. But if it comes against and contradictory to my deen, we will never leave deen and go to that.
I just want to further elaborate. Forgive me, Mufti Sahib, I'm just speaking above you, and of course I can't. I just want to explain one thing that about dreams. There's a hadith of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ that nothing of the true nabuwah remains in this ummah except for a true dream. And then Rasulullah ﷺ says, true dream is 1 out of 46th portion of nabuwah. And please absorb this. Rasulullah ﷺ said, nothing of nabuwah and risala remains except for true dream. Yes, the nabuwah of the Prophet ﷺ remains, but the things that he was given, wahi, revelation, all that stuff, except for true dreams. And then Rasulullah ﷺ says, true dream is 1 out of 46th portion of nabuwah. What does that mean? The Prophet of Allah ﷺ lived as a Prophet of Allah for how many years? 23 years. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ, prior to becoming a Prophet, for 6 months straight, he began to see dreams, which were a stepping stone towards the Nabuwah and Revelation. 6 months of continuous dreams prior to Wahi Iqra Bismi Rabbika Alladhi Khalaq. Now I know we got a lot of good mathematicians here, and computer guys. Don't take out your iPads. So do it in your minds. 6 months is what portion of the 23 years? 1/46th, right? 46th. 1 out of 46. So hadith right there. The Prophet ﷺ says, nothing remains of the signs of Nabuwah except for 1 out of the 46 portion, and which is the true dreams, which Rasulullah ﷺ said remains in Ummah. Dreams are of 3 types. Dreams, please don't ask dream interpretations now. So that's the toughest questions that someone receives. So now the dreams are 3 types. Signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wasawis from shayateen, and your thoughts in your minds and things that you've been thinking about for the entire day. Now how to differentiate between them, it's an entire story to itself. The interpretation of dream itself is a whole story to itself as well. I want to quickly mention there's a man in the history of Islam known as Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala anhu. He's known as the man of the dreams, the man of the dream interpretation. He writes in the Muqaddamah, in the introduction of his book known as Ta'bir al-Ru'ya, he says the dream interpretation news or the knowledge is such which cannot be learnt. You can't go to someone and says, can you teach me the interpretation of dream? You can't. It's given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Within itself, he mentions many stories. And dreams have different aspects. Time, weather, place, feeling, structures, ideas afterwards, all have differences. It is mentioned that a man came to Ibn Sirin rahmatullah alayhi. It is mentioned in Ta'bir al-Ru'ya. He said, Shaykh, I saw a dream that there was a fire underneath my bed. Please tell me what's going to happen. He says, run away, leave your house. Your house is going to burn down. Your family is going to have issues, different rules. SubhanAllah, a few months passed and all that happened. House got burnt down, issues with families, troubles and difficulties. After a few months, another man came. Exact dream. Shaykh, I saw a dream. Fire beneath my bed. He says, you're going to find a treasure. You're going to become wealthy, prosperity, comfort and ease. The students are, what's wrong? Like, did he pay you more than the other? Or what's going on, right? Forgive me, he's not taking no money. So then he said, you know what? He said, the dreams were the same. But both of them saw dream in 2 different weathers. The first one saw the dream in summer, when there is no need of fire. The second man saw the dream in winter, when there is a need of fire. That's Ta'bir al-Ru'ya. In that book it mentions. It's not my interpretation. So don't ask me for deleels. If you want, go check out the book Ta'bir al-Ru'ya, where he got this, where his hadiths from. But I'm saying dream itself is a very complex issue. Very complex issue. And how to do interpretations? Don't share your dreams with anyone. If you have a bad dream, don't share with anyone. Rasulullah ﷺ said, if you see a bad dream, flip to another side that you are sleeping, spit towards your left side, say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and never share this dream with anyone. No harms can ever come to you. If you see a good dream, only share it with those who love you and care for you. Who love you and care for you. They say don't share your problems with others, because 90% of the people don't care and the other 10% are really happy that you have those issues. So many a times you don't really know who to share it with. So you need to make sure that who are you sharing your issues with as well.
So how did Hind, after all she did, was given radiyallahu anhu? Hind. We need to make a short. Time is
the question was regarding Hinda, that our Mufti Sahib mentioned that she was in once before Islam, she was so ferocious and she was so angry that she actually cut out the liver of Hamza, the beloved uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and bit upon it. That's the amount of anger she had in her. So even after doing all of that, how can she have joined the ranks of radiyallahu anha? Before I mention this, I should mention one of the ahadith. The mafhum of the ahadith is if a slave of Allah commits sin so much that it reaches the sky, that the whole world is filled up and it reaches the sky, and then he turned towards Allah and seeks forgiveness of Allah with purity of heart, with sincerity, Allah says, غَفَرْتُ لَكَ وَلَا أُبَالِي, I forgive him and I don't even care. I just forgive him. We have to understand that greatness of Allah. We know the greatness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the people who had tortured him for 13 years, who had killed many of his companions, who were the cause for the death of his close family, who tortured him 3 years in the valley. The children were shouting, crying with hunger. After doing all that, when he returned to Makkah, he said that I forgive you like Yusuf alayhi salam forgave his brothers. That was the greatness of one of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the best creation, of course. Imagine how merciful is the Rabb, the creator of that creation. So, doesn't matter what a person does in the past, if it is sincerity of tawbah and he returns, his sins are forgiven. The same way with Hinda, when she accepted Islam and she gave up her ways of jahala, Allah also accepted her tawbah and she came and became a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Just to add one thing, once Rasulullah ﷺ began to smile, the Sahaba seeing the smile, said, the Prophet of Allah brings a smile to your face. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ said, I remembered a qatil and maqtul, both, but they will be together in Jannah. I remembered Hamza and I remembered Wahshi radiallahu anhu. I remember the one which was killed and the one who killed, how both will be together in Jannah. Meaning this is the rahmah and the mercy of Allah. Never put anyone down. Never underestimate anyone. People took qasams and oaths that the animals of Makkah will become Muslim, but Umar will not change. Never underestimate anyone. Allah can forgive anyone. Allah can change anyone's hearts at any moment.
It's a difficult question regarding the first half of Salah.
So the first question is regarding the first saf itself. If the question is very detailed, it says that we are told that if you are not in a local masjid or local area, you should not be praying in the first saf. Sometimes people force you to be in the first saf. Yes, if there is place in the first saf, don't say, I was told not to pray in the first saf, I'm going to start my own new saf. Please don't do that. Just fill up the first saf, inshallah, and that will be perfectly fine. If you are causing inconvenience to the people who are usually there at all times, then yes. Many a times, alhamdulillah, the people are of that mind that if you are there from a time before and you're sitting to a side in the first saf, and the people don't mind. So act, act in a way that with your intellect and intelligence. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize if people want you to be in the first saf or it doesn't want to be in the first saf. So that's also a topic to itself which needs more clarification, but don't have time. Second question: if someone meets a jinn sahabi today, let me know, inshallah, if you do. Does he become a tabi or not? I had mentioned this yesterday when I began the topic. Is that what defines a sahabi? And I had mentioned this, that ru'yat is a wrong word to use. Seeing the Prophet does not make you a sahabi. Because if someone was to say, if you see a sahabi in the state of iman, then people will say, Abdullah ibn Maktoum radiallahu anhu was a blind man. He never saw the Prophet. How can he become a sahabi? So seeing the Prophet doesn't make a person a sahabi, even with iman. It's the suhbah. The word suhbah, companionship, is required. So usually in your dream, you cannot be a companion with a jinn sahabi. So in that specific case, that does not define a person to become a tabi, quick and simple. So it defines to be a suhbah of an individual, that will be considered as something. Yes, if you see a jinn which is right in front of you, there's a lot of incidents. You have time? No, we don't have time. Jinn stories, right? Jinn stories at 12 o'clock at night, inshallah. So in that case, it would be.
This is a difficult question. It starts from here.
Okay.
So it's about the hijab between men and women. Second paragraph, first is for a second.
Did jinn spend that kind of time with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Jinn did spend time with
Oh yes, there were so many. So there were so many jinn sahaba. There's an entire surah revealed for those sahaba, jinns who accepted Islam when they were listening to the Quran recitation of the Prophet ﷺ at the time of Fajr. The entire surah jinn was revealed for a group of jinn sahabi who actually heard the recitation of the Quran. Wallahu alam, this is not a hadith, but I report to you from my Shaykh al-Hadith, from who I studied a huge Allah wala. He says there exist jinn sahaba, but our hearts are not pure enough to see them. There exists jinn sahaba, but our hearts are not pure enough to see them. Anyways, I don't know. Wallahu alam. Are you answer this? They're going to catch me afterwards. Okay, the question is, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for coming. This is the good part. Here's our, I hope this is, here in our...
Here.
Here, should I say it? Okay, so in our mosque, men and women mingle during speech.
Not here, other places.
You just told me here.
No, sorry. It's not here.
Okay, so I'm going to say not here. In our mosque. Not in our mosque. Men and women mingle during speech and potluck dinners. You guys have potluck dinners? Women are one side and the men are on the other. side. No curtains in between. When we ask them, there is no definite answer. Please answer, Jazakallah. How to take pictures in mosques would interfaith people, including women? It's a very, very complex and detailed question. In the Masjid of Rasulullah, I was in Hajj a few years back. My family was with me. Tell you a personal thing. So there were some brothers with me because in the time of Ihram, you are supposed to keep the face open as no cloth should touch. So my wife was with me. She was wearing a baseball hat with the cloth coming in the front, so the face was not visible and the cloth was not touching her face. So one of the shuyukh come to me and took me to the side and started bashing me and started saying, "Oh, you're more righteous and more pious than the people who gave the fatwas," and stuff like that. I said, "Sheikh, bring me the sight of the haya of Uthman bin Affan. I'll tell her to take off her hijab." I says, "Give me the haya of Uthman in every man here. I will tell her to take off her hijab." Meaning, if you provide me with the haya that those Sahaba had, then indeed we could be those that they have done so, right? And there are clear ahadith and sayings of how that separation needs to be there. And that's the climax of Ummah. And I've spoken about this in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu and interacting with the family member of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the ayahs of the hijab were revealed. So in cases if you attend masajids in which they have open interaction, keep yourself as modest as you can. There are 3 levels which Mufti Sahib mentioned in the beginning himself was Man ra'a minkum munkar falyughayyirhu biyadihi. If you can change that wrong and evil with your hand, go ahead and do so. If you're unable to do that with your hand, then speak about it. Let someone know what is good. If no one is going to listen to you in that case, then you think bad of that evil in your heart, and inshallah you are still upon iman. Keep your aspect of haya and modesty to the utmost level. Let not yourself become an excuse that, oh, everyone is doing it, let me become a part of it. Inshallah, your concern, your worry, your grief, and your continuous support upon the truth will open the doors for many individuals towards goodness itself.
Now the thing is, before we continue, it's almost 10 o'clock now. So if brothers want us to continue, we can continue, or we can keep it for tomorrow. What does the brother say? Brother Ali? Tomorrow, inshallah? Okay, let's finish this one last one and then we'll leave the rest for tomorrow, inshallah. The question was, how can khatibs, imams and shuyukhs help the ummah practice Islam based on Quran and Sunnah and not culture or nationalism? Is culture and nationalism our new idol, which is deviating us from the straight path? This was the question.
An answer? I think it's an excellent question that you asked. You hit the nail right on the head. And I think this is the most important thing that our ulama and the khatib should take. That Rasulullah ﷺ left ummah. There were only 2 jamaats of Sahaba, Muhajirin and Ansar. There was no other group of Sahaba. They were never divided according to their races, their cultures, their languages. We are one ummah, please. The biggest mistakes that we make is that we say, oh, this is a Pakistani masjid, this is a Bangladeshi masjid, this is an Afghan masjid. We do not consider ourselves as ummah. Shaykh Yusuf rahimahullah ta'ala anhu, prior to passing away, he gave an excellent talk which is written in Urdu and English translation has been done. He gave a talk upon ummat. He says, make ummat, unite yourself. That indeed a man on the day of Qiyamah will be given the highest levels of Jannah, seeing, oh my Rabb, I have done only normal amount of work. Your one word became the reasons of uniting the ummah together. And a man will be thrown in the deepest portions of wrong and evil, because one word of their words became the reasons of separation of this ummah. When a person announces, I'm saying yes, there's pride in certain things which is acceptable. There's no arrogance, there's pride in certain things. Some aspects of nationalism, yes, I know I'm not talking about political aspects of it. But when it comes to the level that I'm fulan, I'm that, that's the nara, as Muhammad Yusuf says, that's an announcement of kufr. You're breaking ummah into pieces. You're breaking ummah into pieces. And that's something which destroys the ummah. That when, unfortunately, sometimes through cultures, through races, through languages, it's completely separated. And I sometimes, especially for those children who have grown up here, they'll agree with me more than others, is that many a times within their own household families, they will be brought up in a manner that if a person is of a different race, they will be brought up in a manner that the natural dislike of others will be there, even though they're not teaching anything like this. There was a very beautiful research done on CNN. I don't know, they do very less good research. The rest of the stuff is not worthy anyways. So there was something which was good, not endorsing, don't get me like arrested now or something. So now there was a research done on little kids, 8 years old. They actually put the parents behind a shade that they could not be seen. Then they brought the kids up in front. And then they brought dolls or structures like the faces of individuals, like little children, with different color skins. Starting from white all the way towards dark black, like going from little towards light brown, little dark brown, and dark brown, all the way towards really dark brown. So they brought that. So then they began to ask kids, and they said, which one of you think the smartest one? So everyone pointed towards the lightest of the color. And then they said, who would you love to sit with? Which one you would be scared with? So they started saying their opposite colors, that I would be scared of that color. They're little innocent kids, they don't know what's going on. But that's what they're raised in their environments. And then they're showing the parents. Parents are crying because they know it's them. It's them who have inculcated in the minds of the kids that if that person is not your color, they are not good to you. If they don't speak your language, they are not good, because you're not making ummah. Please accept each other. Please welcome everyone. Let anyone who comes into our masajid as responsible. I'm no one to give advice to the khatib. I'm just their khadim and I'm a servant to them. But I'm speaking about general public. Is that whenever we can, please, give someone a hug. It is mentioned that Ka'b bin Malik radiallahu anhu, long hadith of al-Bukhari, when 3 of them were not spoken to the Sahaba for 40 and 50 days, he said, when my tawbah was accepted, I came to the masjid. He says, my brother Abu Talha, he's not from my mother. He says, but my brother Abu Talha gave me such a hug that I will remember till I die. Meaning the way that he welcomed me was so warming that I can't forget my brother Abu Talha. The way that he welcomed. Smile at someone. Give someone a warm hug. Accept someone of a different color and race. Wallahi, this will bring ummah to one level. Otherwise, we'll remain divided forever. Accept each other. This is its 2 cents of mine.
May Allah give us the tawfiq to have the love and affection amongst us and unite our hearts. And the secret to have love amongst us, as comes the hadith, that is afshu salama bainakum. The whole hadith is, if we do not have iman, we cannot enter Jannah. And we cannot have iman unless there is love amongst us. And then Rasulullah said, should I show you something, a secret which will create love amongst you? Then the Sahaba said, yes, please, Ya Rasulullah. So he said, Afshu salama bainakum, spread salam amongst yourselves. So may Allah give us tawfiq, as long as it's a Muslim, whether we know the person, we don't know whether he is friend or not friend, we start with the practice of giving salam, inshallah. May Allah give us tawfiq.
I just want to say last thing, inshallah. I'm not going to hold you back. I just want to give shout out to someone. Can I give a shout out to someone?
Yeah.
Can I give a shout out to these 3 young men who are sitting in front of me? They are the children of my beloved teacher, and he has so much ihsan upon me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect these children and preserve their father, Mufti Nu'man Sahib. He has taught us for whatever we know, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and preserve these children. I just wanted to give words to their presence. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and preserve them and their families and their fathers and their mothers for raising them in such a manner. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect their fuyud and ulum until the day of Qiyamah, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
سبحان الله بحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك